Today we are talking about the 2026 Met Gala. Now, it is important to note that today I'll be talking about a few looks, but not too many looks. I just kind of wanted to set the scene perfectly for when we do the further, like part two, three, and four. So for part one, I just really wanted to set the scene and really talk about what this Met Gala has represented and what this Met Gala is all about. And I think to start off, I think the 2026 Met Gala is quite different to most Met Galas I've ever seen. I definitely think that part of it has definitely been tainted with the involvement of the Bezos family and them sponsoring it and turning it into a circus. That's definitely a negative, and there were quite a lot of protests online regarding the Bezos involvement. There's a protest group called Everyone Hates Elon that were holding a lot of protest against the Met Gala. So let's watch some of them here. Here you can see the Bezos Met Gala invites you party like it's 1939. Democracy is so last season. They put the Met Gala VIP toilet because obviously, apparently, Amazon workers pee in bottles because they can't actually go to the toilet. Well, to be honest, I've worked in an Amazon warehouse before when I was younger. And in the Amazon warehouse, it is very depressing. First of all, you're not allowed to take any music or anything. So you just have to listen to this this playlist that you hear every single day. It's literally depressing. It's so dystopian. And yes, you are allowed to go and pee, but to be honest, you wouldn't, because I was in a massive warehouse and the time it takes to walk all the way to the toilet and back within that time, because we had targets to hit. And if you leave your station for too long, it will show that you're not hitting your targets and then your gate gets locked. Then to reopen your gate, you have to talk to a manager. And then the manager will be like, well, why was your gate locked? And then it will show that, you weren't around. And then it just makes you. So that's why people don't go to the toilet, basically. So I personally never peed in a bottle, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Amazon workers have. So that's essentially what this is talking about. Obviously, they had messages, different messages for Jeff Bezos. There was a protest I saw that they were putting tiny bottles of pee all around the Met, which is a bit insane. But I think it's warranted. I think any protest and boycotting of the Met Gala is really warranted. Now, something I did find interesting, following up from this, is the fact that Anna Wintour, the lovely out of touch Anna Wintour, was genuinely shocked that there was Met Gala backlash after the Jeff Bezos takeover. And that just shows you how out of touch a lot of these people are. You're supposed to be, well, not anymore, but like the head of the most important magazine in fashion, and you don't even know what the general temperature is politically, what people are talking about politically, what people think politically. I found that really insane. I also found it quite funny. Anna Wintour, the rumor is that she reportedly threw a crisis meeting to figure out how they were going to dealing with the backlash from the Jeff Bezos takeover. I thought that was really funny. And in general, we have very much been seeing fashion court the Bezos family. Of course, we saw the Bezos wedding on Vogue. The Bezos wedding on Vogue started to trigger people saying that Jeff has bought Vogue. That is not true. That's a rumor. There's no confirmation. There's no transaction that's been reported that he actually bought Vogue. But I'm not saying it's not in the works. It's definitely going to be in the works. And Jeff Bezos already owns the Washington Post. So he owns media. It's quite clear that Lauren Sanchez is trying to force her way into fashion. I don't think she's ever going to be respected in fashion, ever. So I think she should just stop trying. But she's trying hard. She's a bit of a try-hard when it comes to fashion. And I wouldn't be surprised if she's the reason why Jeff ends up buying Vogue anytime soon. I'm talking about the downfall of just what the Washington Post and anything related to the Bezos family. There's a big story today that has been really controversial via the Washington Post, and it's titled, "How Do Stars Pee at the Met Gala? An Investigation." Now, of all things I expect from the Washington Post, I expect hard-nosed, serious journalism. This is insane. Trying to investigate how people pee because they wear extravagant dresses is just not the kind of thing that I would expect from the Washington Post, but it doesn't surprise me considering that when trashy Jeff Bezos is involved, I'm not surprised that this is what they have resorted to. So I think this is quite embarrassing. So I think overall, I'm saying all of this to say overall, this Met Gala has been a bit of a circus. It has been all over the place. And it seems a lot more political than any of the past Met Galas I've ever seen, and more people than ever are talking about politics than I've ever seen before, which is a good thing because I mean, you look at what's going on in the world, like unprovoked wars, all sorts of things are happening that I won't get into that I'm sure all of you are privy to. So yeah, it's all been a mess, to be honest. Like when I think about this Met Gala, it's just all a bit of a mess. It's quite telling that Daphne Guinness hasn't been to the Met Gala in many years. Yeah, it's also become just a bit of a, I don't even know what the right word to use, but it's just too much of a spectacle where it's no longer about clothing. People don't really talk about the clothing anymore, and fashion has become so much more mainstream over the years, right? So I wanted to say circus, but I already said that. But fashion has become so much more mainstream over the years that there are a lot more people involved in fashion that don't really know anything about fashion. So a lot of Met Gala reviews now just become, that's not good, that's not giving, that look is not giving, not talking about the theme, not talking about the clothing, not talking about the designers that made the clothing, not giving any interesting insight on the clothes. It's all about, can I shit on XYZ celebrity the first and get my views? That's essentially what the Met Gala has turned to. So yeah, Met Gala has been quite a bit of a mess. So I thought it only fitting for the first look for me to review that should be the Lauren Sanchez look, right? Lauren Sanchez is wearing custom Schiaparelli designed by, of course, Daniel Roseberry, styled by Roach. Now, obviously, you guys have, I was one of the first people to talk about this on the internet in terms of what the reference is, but essentially, this dress is supposed to reference the portrait of Madame X. So, for people that don't know, this is also part of the collection that the Met actually has. And considering that the theme was fashion is art, I expected a lot of people to just reference sculpture, past artwork that is in the Met, that is owned by the Met. Also, the exhibit really touches on this idea of the body as a work of art and clothing as and its relationship with the body as an artistic medium. So I expected a lot of bodycon dresses as well for that same reason. So this was to be expected, that someone would reference a painting that is literally owned by the Met. So the portrait of Madame X is a very controversial painting, and the story essentially is it was painted by John Singer Sargent in 1884. And the reason why it's so controversial is because the original painting, the model in question, the person who the portrait is about, Virginie Gautreau, her strap was slightly off her shoulder. And that was considered, we need to think the 1800s when the sexism was through the roof. Not like sexism still isn't through the roof, but I can only imagine how it was in the 1800s. The expectations of women, how women's bodies were policed, how the way women dressed at the time was policed. It was really controversial, and it was seen as in very bad taste to have one strap off shoulder. And her husband was actually so angry about it, he told John Singer Sargent to essentially remove the painting, and Sargent essentially ended up repainting it with the strap normal for the final version, which is the version that the Met has. Let me see if I can actually find a picture of the original painting. Yeah, this is what like the original looked like. So the strap was slightly off shoulder. Now, why this is interesting, at least to me, yeah, he had to leave Paris and made a new career in London. Yeah. It like basically destroyed her. Obviously, I can talk about it, but we're just talking about it slightly to reference it back to Lauren Bezos's look. But yeah, it literally destroyed her life. And she was someone that was a really famous socialite. She was seen as very beautiful in society. And then it just turned into a conversation about how grotesque the painting was, and it just messed up how she was perceived in society at the time. So that's why it's very controversial. Now, going back to Lauren Sanchez, I'm thinking, what kind of statement is she trying to make? What's her point here? What exactly is she trying to tell us? Is she trying to make a reference to the fact that, she's drawing a parallel between a socialite whose image has caused a scandal, and she, of course, is, I don't even know what to call her at this point, but let's call her a socialite. Her image also causes scandal. She's very controversial. I just think it's really funny. I really think it's really funny. I think whatever conversation she was trying to have, I don't think it hit. I'm also really curious to know whose idea was it to have her wear this? Was it Law Roach? Was it Daniel Roseberry? Was it her? Or was it a mixture of all of them? I'm very curious to know whose idea exactly it was to do all of these. I think it'll be interesting to get that information in the future. This YouTube channel runs on your support. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon. You'll gain access to exclusive content that includes everything from my Patreon podcast, where I give a behind-the-scenes insight into the fashion industry, as well as a fashion book club, where I review my favorite fashion books. You can also check out my fashion ebook, which highlights the best fashion journalists to follow, definitions of common fashion terminology, and how to determine what a good source of fashion information is. The links to everything are in the description below.